Now, you may or may not have noticed that I am shockingly by myself. Bob is here, but during the countdown, his Zoom crashed. Not planned. Nothing to do. Here he is. Nothing to do with the drop of the Analyst's toolkit and the ways in which critical thinking connects to the precise nature of what it is that we're talking about. It's just a mere technical a coincidence, a matter of happenstance. We'll get it resolved pretty quickly, as we say when we paraphrase Captain Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean. Problems arose, ensued, were overcome, and here he is. Thanks, thanks for getting that problem fixed so promptly, Bob.
Yeah, it's the old age thing of the leader come out of my computer and it just turned itself off.
Oh no!
Back on again now, as you can see, and I'm here.
I was just saying it was almost like we'd arranged it and that we were analyzing how to solve the technical problem, and it was the convenience that way around. But no, we're referencing the Analyst's toolkit today, which is something that involves a number of tools: instinct, intuition, reasoning, critical thinking en masse, and there are a number of human processes that both embolden and strengthen those processes, but also make them more challenging if they're not addressed in that kind of situation as well. So, but what's been your experience of the Analyst's toolkit, just to get us going, first of all?
Right, well, I think it's what separates the entertainment, the body language experts, and the people who do it professionally, because it's all well and good sitting in a room on an armchair looking at a video and making approximations of what you think is happening on the screen.
Yeah,
And it's a completely different thing to be on a dark night somewhere and then seeing something that you want to make sense of there and then.
absolutely. To me, the more I spend time in and around the understanding of behavior in any discipline, bear in mind, the more I come to appreciate the requirement for even competent critical thinking skills, because as soon as you step out of that safe haven of a video that you can rewind and pause and slow down and speed up, and photos and all of this kind of thing, which have their place in specific parts of training, of course. But the second you move into, dare I say, reality, all of those tiny little pressures, all of those human concerns, the emotional qualities becoming antagonistic to clear reasoning that stop you from really getting at the crux of what information is, they rear their ugly heads. So it makes more sense for us, in only my opinion, bear in mind, to train this alongside the understanding of human behavior, if not more so. Mostly because there will be no proper understanding if you can't properly critically pull apart what it is that you're seeing. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that's 100%. I mean, what the skills we're talking about are within us all anyway. We're all within our capabilities, no matter what education level we've got or whether we've got academic qualifications or not, because they rely on basic functions that we all do most days and in most situations, like intuition and instinct. I mean, instinct is hardwired into us. It's been here since the beginning of time, and it is just our way of being able to deal with the world and any sort of unexpected things that happen. And so it makes perfect sense to me that if you're going to do this job professionally, you have to be aware of what your toolkit is. And so that's what we're going to do today.
Absolutely. And we've got Mr. Jane and Julie joining us live. suitably mocking the technical difficulties that we had
Uh,
at the start, which is fair play. It's not without cause. It's not without cause. So
yeah.
one of the well, if we look at the kind of English descriptions of thought processes, there is insight, there is intuition, there is instinct, and there is impulse. And
Mm,
in terms of how I've seen them described, both as cerebral processes for critical analysis and that which is kind of governed by emotive connection towards feeling your way, and everything that exists in between, there is a through line that helps, well, at least me, understand the specificities of where they come from. So if you say insight is from here,
mm,
our intuition is what we feel. We get a
mm.
gut instinct,
Yeah, it's
and
very true.
our impulses may be considered to be a little bit more primal, a little bit more southernly
Mm,
than that in those particular situations. The one through line that connects those kind of processes is how much conscious, uh, 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 conscious, what's the word I need? Conscious connection to them,
mm.
just data we can bring. We've got a lot of
Yeah.
it going on here. We can analyze our own thoughts. Less so if it's from here feeling our way, maybe we shouldn't,
Mm,
maybe we should get involved. If it's instinctual, largely that is just information that's passed you by way too quickly for you to be able to have some kind of critical assessment,
mm.
which is why the insight becomes a required practice to properly
Sure.
analyze the data.
Yeah, sure. And the sort of instinct and intuition are um, they're just based on things that happen inside you. Instinct is through biology.
Mm,
It's like I say, it's a response that we've developed over time to keep us out of trouble.
mm,
And intuition, um, funnily enough, years ago, we used to have the police power in the UK to stop and search individuals. And at that time, it was a power that you didn't have to give a reason for. And it was copper sense. You sensed something was wrong and you asked to stop and search someone because of it. Um, that was taken away, that power, because it was misused.
yeah.
But looking back on it now, I thought it was bad at the time to take it away, but looking back on it, it's missing the vital part of um, working it through and thinking, well, what is the logical reason for this? Just instinct isn't enough. So um, we all use instinct and intuition initially, but if we want to do behavior analysis, certainly we want to say, well, what's the logic behind that? Because he's yawning, it could be because he's tired, or it could be because he's whatever. And so you don't know until you take that process all the way through, and then the reasoning come into it of how you respond to that to validate your decision.
100%. 100%. We've had a pretty interesting question come in from Mr. Jane. Um, do you think impulse is useful for critical thinking? And then goes on to say, I mean, using your own impulses, not other people's.
Yeah, yeah. I think it certainly is. As long as you just follow what we've just said, is that impulses can be wrong and they're good as a indicator, but then you would have to take the process through, much like the OODA loop, orientate yourself before you make decisions. And so when you see body language experts just say, oh, I've seen him do that, and that means that, there is no reasoning or logic in there. They're just saying what they see.
Mm,
And they think that maybe that shrug of the shoulders or that facial expression is not unique. But
mm,
we all know, well, I would hope that we know that behavior isn't binary. And what one person face they may pull might just be one of their personal cues rather than having meaning attached to it. And so you have that impulse, you see that, and you think, and intuition to me is very quick, but we're drawing rather when instinct is just in us, intuition is there is a reference to something that we've experienced before.
mm. Yeah.
So but we still need to think, well, I saw that before, but that's, the logic is I've seen that before, but does that fit within what I'm seeing now? Or, and that always, because otherwise we get the biases coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, shock horror, I'm very much in agreement. To me, at least, the very use of an impulsive thought or an instinctive thought or whatever you want to call it, but that thought that happens really much without a great deal of critical awareness for it, those
Yeah.
are to be those are to be investigated as well
Yeah.
alongside your validation and dismissal and clarification of whatever it is that you are observing at that particular moment, because as you rightly state, an impulse could just as readily come from a bias that you have as it could
Yeah.
be something that is pertinent to whatever is going on in that moment. It's down to your analysis of when it presents itself to find
Mm.
out which is which. You might impulsively um sort of disregard thoughts that
Yeah.
you have, which is kind of counterintuitive to a good critical process. So without
Sure.
analyzing the impulses that come up,
Yeah.
so long as they're healthy and not a violent impulse that you're nurturing in any sense of the word. Um, so Julie asks, isn't well, does intuition or instinct, does it lead to a kind of tunnel vision?
Yes. I'll give you an example on how you overcome that is say security at a railway terminus or something. So you're watching the crowds going for the trains and you spot someone whose behavior you feel is out of keeping with the people around them. Um, so you monitor them for a while, and then that would to then sort of interact with them, you'd have to see that behavior continue. And then, the logic is it to do with the situation at the railway station? Are the trains delayed? Are they on time? Or people behaving in a way? But then you would test that by then going to speak to them and do a second line assessment of them based on questions that you ask them and how they respond to them. And then thirdly, you would then take them from the railway station if you feel it's necessary and take them to somewhere else where you can do an interview, as you were, to find out. It goes wrong when you miss out any of them steps.
Mm.
So just going and jumping on someone because they're behaving strangely at a railway station without any sort of interaction with them and considering the logic of it, the context and everything else would obviously be very wrong. But and the issue comes is when it's time critical.
Yeah.
And we've got the example in the UK of John de Mendes. I can't remember if that's his John something de Mendes, and who was portraying all the behaviour of someone suspicious, but it turned out his railway station was closed and he was just trying to get to work.
Yeah,
So much so that he jumped the barriers, I believe,
it was a Brazilian.
which is another suspicious behaviour, and he ended up getting shot because that, but that is critical thinking and its most extreme, isn't it?
100%. 100%. It is. I mean, I've been talking about the notion of overthinking a lot, right? Just amongst friends. Um, and we have this kind of almost pet analogy that overthinking is awesome. It's overthinking without control that is the problem, right? Because
Yeah,
if you have it's the over part that does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the description, whereas if you're critically thinking, that has the control built in, and you're capable of entertaining a good number of variables in the particulars of the
sure.
situation. But if it is that there is no control, as a way of kind of sharpening or shaping how you think is probably a better way of describing it, then that is what will lead to, at the very least, Hicks law or instinctual problems or
Yeah,
connection towards biases, etc., in that situation. So I have a couple of definitions in relation to the process. So instinct, as defined as fast, automatic, survival-driven responses.
yeah,
Their evolutionary purpose would be things like fight, and freeze mechanisms. As an
Yeah.
example, it may be things like a protection agent reacting to sudden movement before conscious analysis, as we saw, well, as has been seen in the example that you gave. When it helps versus when it hijacks is the difference between cognitive bias and just reacting because you're scared, you know. And from a behavioral intelligence standpoint, we should look to train instincts through exposure,
Mm.
not suppression, because that kind of exposure to it, you'll find out more about what the instinctual property of that is doing for you, if indeed it's doing anything for you at all. So you can start
Yeah.
to shape that thought process along with that. And it's no surprise that it continues on down that, like with intuition, these are slightly slower processes, more emotively
Yeah.
involved. Where is it? The neuroscience of intuition, the role of the basal ganglia, and thin slicing, which we've dealt with a
Yeah.
lot in this group before. And it's the difference between past learning and evolutionary programming. So the cautionary tale that they recommend here is to be aware of when intuition becomes a projection or a kind of
Yeah.
prejudice, which I mean, you being the boots on the ground copper that you were, you'll be able to talk about this more than I will, because I've only read studies on it. In that stop and search was a problem in a projection of bias in those
Yes.
particular situations, because
It's
people didn't
exactly right.
know how to connect to it. So we're looking about bringing um, larger order is probably a fairer way of describing it, and an order to how we think. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah. Making it systematic. And when, in fact, I'm going to be doing this in a few weeks' time. And if you're going to do it properly, you have to do it live. So we'll be taking people to an area and letting them observe people in that area and make decisions about them. Um, because it's not something you can train and do role play for, because role play has got no risk attached. A bit like the people watching videos of someone and saying, "Oh, he means this, he means that." There's no risk involved,
Mm,
and so doesn't work. It doesn't work for you, and it makes your assessment open to criticism as well, or dispute, because then it just becomes your personal opinion,
mm,
or your personal opinion if you're an expert in body language, which doesn't happen, well, isn't such a thing. But so when you're doing it for real, you can get caught up in the moment. That's the problem when it becomes too emotional, like you say, and you have to build in that distance. That's why observing for a period before you make that approach. You've already got it clear in your mind that you're going to try and be as unbiased as you can. It's impossible to be totally unbiased, but you've used logic to validate your reasons for that approach or for your decision. If you're just doing analyzing someone um, in a job interview or something like that, and then it comes down to, well, this is what I think is happening. This is the logical reason for it. Now I'm just going to test my reasoning by asking some questions or getting some answers from that person, or just letting them speak for a little while so I can see whether my judgment holds water.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, if anything as well, this analyst's toolkit, not to put me on a soapbox, because I will rattle on about it for quite some time, is, in my opinion, a required skill for society en masse today.
Mm,
There is a
mm,
distinct lack of this kind of thinking that goes on in pretty much every discipline I've had the experience with, which isn't all of them, I grant you. But
mm.
I would be willing to bet money that you could step into any kind of comment section, and this lack of proper processing of data would be rife there.
Oh yeah.
We've had a few comments come in. Mr. Jane says, oh, gone. Is my mouse gone it? There we go. He says, I believe in daily life, most damage comes from underthinking. People get used to it in terms of A means B and C means D, that kind of thing. Ruth's here. Hey, Ruth. She says, I watched the, oh, it keeps jumping. I watched the program about the disappearance of Amy Bradley, missing from a cruise ship years ago. It was interesting how they approached the investigation. They relied heavily on polygrams. There were so many different lines of inquiry after different people came forward. It's interesting to see how people decided which to follow up on. It's also interesting how so many people made stuff up to try and get the reward. Maybe the police didn't follow something up, which may have led to what actually happened to Amy.
Mm,
I don't, I
yeah.
don't, I don't know that case. Have you? Yeah, do you know?
No, I don't know. But there was something interesting on YouTube this morning. Obviously, Trump is having a bit of a rough time at the moment in the States, and there is someone, I think he's called Occupy Democracy or something like that.
Right?
And the guy was making some points about the Jeffrey Epstein case. And he was making them quite vigorously, like they were smoking guns. But when you got through his bluster, he was obviously so biased
Yeah.
towards the point of view he was bringing. It took all validity away from it because he was just, and that can get lost, and that can be your thought process as well, especially if you're taking this to be, say, a job interview or anything. Is you can have a point of view, and just the mere way that person is dressed or how they behave could bias you against them, because in your brain
Mm,
you've got images of that type of person, that's that classification of society you've got a natural aversion to anyway through previous experience or things that you've seen, and even more so now
mm,
it's things you see online.
mm,
And so in any instance now, you can make the truth, or you can make anything true if
mm.
you've got people who believe it's true.
Which is sad. Really,
Mm.
it's sad. I mean, it's happening over here as well. In terms of Farage and
Yeah,
what's happening in Epping at the
yeah,
minute. I know a number of people who are reform voters, a kind of extended friends of friends, and these types of things. Um, and we're having a chat about it. They're getting quite heated, obviously, because that's kind of their market base of reform.
mm,
It's kind of been made that way. And my response was, how am I, as a potential constituent or a potential voter, supposed to put faith in someone with a proven track record of deception, a proven track record of manipulation of statistics, a proven track record of a lack of doing their job that they're being paid
mm.
to do in that particular situation? And I'm met with the, oh, you're biased, you're just a militant lefty. And whereas, okay, I am left leaning, but those are irrefutable facts of
Yeah,
that can't be argued. Well, they can be argued, but poorly. I would
yeah,
argue in that situation. The same as with what's happening in Epping. Um,
yeah,
I overheard some people at the gym talking about it, and I popped my head in. I was like, okay, so how many white people have been sent to prison for sex crimes over these particular times? Oh, I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think, we're getting off the subject slightly, but it's that we can forget truth. There is truth and there's alternative truth. What we have now is decision making being made on perspective.
Mm,
And that is dangerous because we've all got different world perspectives. But if you're of a certain persuasion, then you can be swayed over to someone's truth,
mm.
even though it's just a perspective.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
so, and the MAGA, I don't want to take sides in it, but the MAGA and the Trump way of doing things, if you listen to the press conferences and everything, is no matter in the face of anything, you never admit it if you can avoid answering, but you never concede.
mm,
And, that's difficult
it's
and problematic, I would say.
agreed. And it's one of the things that I encountered with the tools of analysis. It's
Mm,
and I was talking about it in some of my classes over the weekend. There is a misdiagnosis almost between problems that are surface problems and
Mm.
the core problem that's actually at the root of that.
Yeah,
How very
yeah,
often the two are confused top of the other. It might
yeah,
be very easy for me to say things like, um, "Oh, you never listen to me." Right? It might be a very kind of surface sounding problem to say, but on the
mm,
back of that, what's being avoided, or rather not addressed, is I'm not getting my needs met,
yeah,
whatever they are in that particular circumstance. But also, without proper analysis of the situation, it could simply be that I'm annoyed that I'm not being listened to,
yeah,
right? And that's the trade-off that requires attention.
sure. And if you're doing this for anything other than entertainment, then the most important question is not what you can see. You have to be trained to a certain extent to spot these things and know what they mean. But that's the easy part. The hard part is, why am I seeing it? And what does it mean in the context of that person normative behavior and their abnormative behavior and the situation they're in at that moment and every other circumstance that comes around that. If you want to get a good read on someone, and I'm sure Ruth would agree, who's here, is that, people being misinterpreted in job interviews. Oh, we can't trust him, he won't look at us when he's talking, without knowing the full circumstances of that person. And, it comes back to that every day you see someone, it doesn't matter if you know them, you treat them as they want to be treated on that day, because then they'll feel comfortable and they'll see that you want to engage with them. And then you'll be much better identifying what is just their normal behavior, which will allow you to see when there's abnormal behavior.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And the reason might be that this is not as prevalent in as many people as I would like it to be. Is there is an allure of a bias or a heuristic or a this means this kind of approach.
Yeah,
I fully understand that. If you're observing 10 to 12 people, it might make your life easier just to go, they
yeah,
this. Might be easier, but it's not the right way of doing things because humans are much more complex
yeah,
and nuanced and detailed. That's why I have
yeah,
such a problem, and it's only a personal problem, bear in mind, with any kind of constructed idea that is binary in nature.
yeah,
Like they are either this, or the masculine and the feminine, that you're a right or a left, you're this or this. There is so much area
mm,
to understand in the middle that very rarely gets addressed, which is when
yeah,
these kind of easy analyses of, oh, he's folded his arms, therefore he's trying to assert dominance. Bugger off. Like,
yeah,
look a little bit more critically in those situations. It's not
mm,
gonna be something that an app or a prompt, that kind of process in your head can do for you.
yeah,
You input a picture and it spits out a response. There is nuance. There is meaning to be discovered.
sure. And I think the important thing to consider is, no matter how good you've been at this in the past, you have to be able to understand that you will make mistakes.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is to minimize those like you say, critical thinking and making sure and seeking validation
Mm.
all the time. Anyone who says that you can do an assessment of someone in a certain period of time, that's just rubbish, because it will take for however it longs, depending on the person you're with. I use a video of a guy from a TV show, a home improvement show, and he's discussing the what the work he's done, and all the time he's doing it, he does the sort of disgust face, to sort of crinkles his nose up, and he's doing it all the time. And but what you've got to look at there is, you've got to see it, acknowledge it, don't put a meaning on it, don't say, oh, it's disgust. He does that. What is he doing when he does that? And what he's doing, he's talking about what he's done. And
Yeah.
so, in a way, it's maybe that he's got low self-esteem, and he's thinking, and he's internally saying, "You can't say this because you're not that clever," or whatever. It could be anything.
Yeah.
But people would read that, and I've seen it so many times in these videos online where they say, "Oh, he's done that. This means this. That means he means this," and it doesn't. It really doesn't, and it's dangerous to think it does.
Wholeheartedly agree. And as a fellow glasses wearer yourself, you may have
Yeah,
seen the first thing that jumped out into my head is I've seen some people sometimes like do that to try and just
yeah,
shift
exactly. Yeah,
up their face, to a
yeah.
more comfortable position. There's so many things happening. We got something coming from Mr. James.
Okay.
He says, what about without knowing what their normal behavior is? For example, someone who cheats might talk to their partner less, but someone might choose to speak more and without their normal behavior. Which way would you go?
That's interesting. Well, sometimes it would all depend on the decision, on the circumstance, wouldn't it? It's very difficult to give answers to hypothetical situations without, because then we're just jumping into maybe that of, oh, well, this means this type of thing, or you can do this.
Absolutely.
Um, I think, yeah, it is difficult when you are in real time. Say like I said earlier, you've stopped someone and you've got to make a judgment about them. But even then, you've got to think to yourself, like you'd have enough time to think, well, why am I making this decision? Is this just instinct is telling me, or intuition? Because he's got the profile, that person's got the profile of someone that I've known from, is in my brain from a negative experience later in the past, and that's just manifesting itself now. This isn't easy.
No, God.
Um, it's made to look easy by TV shows and that, but if when you're doing it, and then, as we both do it, and you're doing it for people, and their jobs depend on it, if they're in a job interview, or acquisitions and mergers. I've done some in the past where you sit in on the acquisitions and say to them, you need to push more and that sort of thing. They'll give you more.
Yeah.
It's critical for that person at that time. It's critical, and so you have to get it right. And the fact that you get asked back again is because you got it right and you've given them good advice.
Mm,
And that takes a long time to learn. But
mhm.
as we keep saying, these are just skills you've got.
Yeah.
What you've got to do is you've got to practice them, and you've got to see someone, or something jumps out at you, and that's the instinct thing, or the instinct. So you see something, oh, what's that?
Mm,
Then the intuition,
mm,
go through it. Why have I got that in? Like I can remember a woman walking along a street at night, goes around a corner, and there's a car parked up, and there's obviously someone in it. So the instinct is the self-preservation. She suddenly feels that tingle because her amygdala's coming into play. The intuition, as it turned out, is that she'd seen something on TV recently where that had led to someone being dragged into a car. As it turned out, it was none of that.
yeah.
But in that meantime, she died 999.
Yeah. Wow.
So, without the logic of thinking about, well, it's a well-lit street, cars usually park there,
Mm,
and sort of going through it, it's very hard in real time.
yeah.
There's no pause and replay, as you say.
No, God, no. Apply. I've never met anybody that engages in like this kind of applied analytical thinking and analytical processing who is, kind of placid in their work
Mm.
role. They might be relaxed, sure, but I'm being very specific. They might be a relaxed person, but they're not placid because
Yeah,
this is always active and always
yeah,
engaged and processing possibility. You know, there
yeah.
there is I'm never short of a pop culture reference, but
Mm.
if those of you who've seen Men in Black 3, this is very specific. There is an alien on there who sees space and time differently across the multiverse, but he never really knows what's about to happen until he puts the connections down in front of him, and he'll say things like,
Mm.
"Unless we're in the timeline where this happens, oh, it doesn't. Therefore, this means this," and it keeps going, and he's constantly equating and processing all of the information that he's seeing, even though he's aware of everything. And that is kind of an aspirational archetype that I personally shoot for. I mean, I'm never obviously going to get towards that supernatural status, but it's that constant process and connection towards the situation that I'm involved in, that I always want to be involved in actively processing new data, which is why I hate the word mastery or expert, because to me it implies that you've stopped learning. And you can't.
Yeah, you're right. I said it last week, I think, to Ruth, that every day's a learning day.
Absolutely.
And, like I say, you make mistakes. As sometimes I will be sitting somewhere and something will catch my eye with someone, and I look at them and these, and I just think to myself, what has caught my eye? It's obviously, and then, it's probably because either it's unusual or it is usual in that it pings something in my brain, in my limbic system, that says, oh, you've seen that before.
Yeah.
And it was interesting last time for some reason. And then the logic is thinking, well, why am I thinking that? And why am I thinking in this occasion? And what does it mean? These are all the things that have got to go through your mind. And so that, you've got to practice it, and you've got to be big enough to know that you're not the best and you're going to get it wrong.
Put that on a t-shirt, because people should wear it. So I mean, there we go, folks. If we could leave you with anything, it would be with that practice game. Almost the investigations that you can carry out no matter where you are for practice is why you are thinking what you're thinking. Get more in touch with your own thinking processes, and if you have the opportunity, read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's just a wonderfully insightful book. Mr. Jane says thank you. He also goes on to say, it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Education never ends, Watson. It's a series of lessons with the greatest left for the last. He's dropping a Sherlock Holmes quote in, but accurate though it is. So any final thoughts on this, Bob, before we wind it up?
I just think that it's a subject that we could talk about for hours, and it's an integral part of courses that we are going to run in the future. And it's a skill that instinct is just there. You can't help instinct, but intuition, you can build on it. You can hone it, and obviously logic and reasoning, you can get much better at that. And if you're really serious about this, then it doesn't have to be the what we do, but you do need, if you're going to be serious about this, to make sure that you don't make too many mistakes, is to get some sort of training in it, development in it, if you want to call it that.
100%. It's not a discipline specific skill set to be more of a critical thinker. It's just as prevalent to a dentist as it is to a behavioral analyst and everything that exists in between. So if it interests you, get in touch, guys, and it's something that we can set you onto a more critically thought through path. So with that in mind, we're going to love you and leave you, and we'll see you all again next week for another stream. All right, guys, take it easy.
Bye.